in Mark chapter 12, verses 28 through 34. Mark chapter 12, verses 28 through 34. It reads, "One of the scribes came near and heard them disputing with one another. And seeing that he answered them well, he asked him, 'Which commandment is first of all?' Jesus answered, 'The first is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. So shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. Second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these.' Then the scribe said to him, 'You are right, teacher. You have truly said that he is one, and besides him there is no other. And to love him with all the heart and with all the understanding and with all the strength, and to love one's neighbor as oneself. This is much more important than all whole burnt offerings and sacrifices.' When Jesus saw that he answered wisely, he said to him, 'You are not far from the kingdom of God.' After that, no one dared to ask him any question." For our conversation today, as we engage this time in the life of culture, I want to talk about a proper prescription for love. A proper prescription for love. This Tuesday, we celebrate Valentine's Day. But it really ought to be called Saint Valentine's Day, because it is named after one of the early Christian martyrs named Valentine, and was established by Pope Gelasius I in 496. It has become a day in which lovers express their love for each other by presenting flowers, buying candy, and sending valentines. And so this holiday first became associated with romantic love in the circle of Geoffrey Chaucer. And you know that was a long time ago. In the High Middle Ages, where the tradition of courtly love flourished. And so you know what we do. We go out, get the big teddy bears with hearts on them. And you know, brothers, a lot of times we're not as expressive. You know, we don't really know how to say, what to say, how to say it real nice. So we rely on the love song. We get the big teddy bear. We get the big heart-shaped candy box. We get the room to spice things up. We just do different stuff to try and show that special one that we care about them. But my question today is, do we really know what love is? Do we really know what love should look like? Because a lot of times what we call love is really lust. And when the lust fades, where is the love? And so what we often do in these times is focus on those we think love us, using this time to secure, acquire love, and then we feel out of sorts if no one, quote unquote, loves us. But the truth would be known, it's not even that no one loves us, but it's that the ones that we want to love us, hello somebody, don't seem to love us. And so understanding love is understanding its proper prescription. How should love be shaped, presented, and take form? And so the background surrounding our text is anything but love. The chief priests, scribes, and elders in this part of Matthew were arguing about Jesus' authority, tested his solidarity with Israel by asking him about taxes, and even asked him about the resurrection. Sounds like today, some of the stuff that we argue about. And some of the things that we argue about, let's tell the truth, doesn't amount to two dead flies. And so here they were, the leaders. Instead of being concerned about the people, they were being concerned about how to one-up Jesus. And so out of all these disputes came a question. Which is the greatest commandment of all? Let me put a pin right there. I want you to hear this how the original hearers heard it. So often we tout the 10 commandments, but there were about 613 commandments. The 10 commandments were the moral code of the law. And so the moral code of the law has never gone away. Really, the law has never gone away. But that Jesus came to do what? Fulfill the law. So the places in the law that we could not do or do not do, Jesus fulfilled those places by his death, burial, and then resurrection. And so here we are. We couldn't fulfill it. And so the question was raised by one of the elders. What is the greatest commandment of all? And Jesus took him to Deuteronomy 6:4. That's where that quote comes from, where he says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." Deuteronomy 6:4. And so he added to it, and you should love your neighbor as yourself. During Black History Month, one of the things we ought to remember is we are here because of love. What do you mean, Pastor? Very simply, there are those that loved us, their community, so much that they sacrificed the gift of life so that we would have more. Think about it. Dr. Martin Luther King no longer with us. His life was sacrificed so that we would have more. Think about all of those nameless activists, those persons who registered to vote in dangerous conditions. Think about all those persons that were challenged, but yet they had a greater love for the community than they had for themselves. And here we are, the beneficiaries of that. That's why I believe, and I agreed with him, when Al Sharpton did the eulogy for Tyree Nichols, he basically said to the 5 officers, people sacrificed and died for you to have the position. And you treated it, in essence, like it was nothing. They sacrificed, they gave the ultimate sacrifice so that you could be in that job. And so really, when you look over our history, I was watching a documentary on both Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass last night. The overriding arching principle was love. They loved their people. Harriet Tubman loved her people so much, she kept going back to her old haunts, where she escaped from slavery and freed over 70 people and never lost a soul. And then went down to the midst of South Carolina and in a daring raid with Union soldiers, freed over 800 people, never lost a soul because of the love that she had for her people. So let me break this down this way. What is the proper prescription for love? Glad you asked me that question. God plus me plus us equals love. Let me do that for you again. God plus me plus us equals love. So now let me take it a step further. What does it mean to love God? You can't serve two masters. I know you don't like that imagery and that language, but the bottom line is, as I heard in the song once, you got to serve somebody. Either you're serving Satan or you're serving God. And a lot of people don't realize when they're serving Satan that they are. But you got to serve somebody. And if you serve two masters, if you're undecided, you're going to love one and hate the other. So the bottom line is, if you love God, you begin to do what God says. And what does God do in return? God so loved the world that he gave his one-of-a-kind son. So where you fell short, God's son made up the slack. And then while we were yet sinners, we fell short. That's all it means. Sin means missing the mark. All of us have missed the mark. I've missed it. You've missed it. All of us have missed it. But God loved us. And we know what love is because God loved us first. Think about it. God saw what was worthless. And God redeemed it. Wherever you are right now, you may feel worthless. You may feel like your friends don't see you. People don't see you, but God sees you. And God loves you right where you are. So that leads me to the second part. Love your neighbor as yourself. Now, the starting place is yourself, because if you don't love yourself, it's going to be real hard to love your neighbor. So you have to love yourself. So I want to encourage you to do that. Love yourself. Love on yourself. And then transfer the love you have for yourself to your neighbor. Do you want somebody to steal from you? Of course not. So don't steal from your neighbor. Do you want somebody to beat you? Of course not. Then don't beat your neighbor. And I had this conversation yesterday with somebody and followed my train of thought. Some of what we suffer in the midst of our community is because we don't love ourselves. We have a view of ourselves that others have view us, the way others view us. I've often said that racism is the greatest marketing scheme ever concocted. Because really, race is a is a sociological construct. We're really all part of the human race. We're just variations of the same thing. And some may say this is not important, but when you, for example, look at the word Adam, in the Hebrew, it means earth. Earth is not white. So we are the original man, the original woman. And everything else is a variation of us. But it's a variation indeed. That's why an Asian woman and a European man, a black woman, and any other race of people, as we designate race, can get together and have children because we are a variation of one and the same. But when racism came into being as a justification for putting people that look like me into chains, then we upset things. And now, because of this supremacy that has been fostered by racism. We feel that other people's ice is colder than our ice, but ice is ice. And we feel like other people's ways are better than our ways. So that's how, for example, you get officers beating up on black folk. Let me help you understand what I'm saying. The issue is not the ethnicity of the officers. The issue is the ethnicity of the victim. And those types of beatings don't happen like that amongst folk that live in Germantown and live in Scarsdale. But they happen often in our neighborhoods. And then conditions are shaped so that we begin to prey on each other. And if you look at crime in this nation, it is one of proximity. So in other words, people that look like you are going to be the ones that practice crime toward you. So if you live out east, those folk that do crime going to look like you because they live around you. So we have to begin to love ourselves and love our neighbor as ourselves. Again, the proper prescription for love. God plus me plus us equals love. Still don't get it? There was a man that sold Christmas trees every December in Chicago. And a young couple came to him once, ready to buy trees. They looked very cute, but they had hand-me-down clothes on, and they looked like they couldn't afford a decent tree. And sure enough, they found a tree that looked decent on one side, but the other side was kind of missing branches and looked real raggedy. So they picked that tree. Then they picked another tree that looked the same way. And the two trees together didn't cost what one good tree would. So they took the trees with them, and the gentleman that sold the trees couldn't figure out why would they even want trees that looked that bad. Well, a few days later, he was walking to where he sold the trees, and he happened to look up into the window of a ground floor apartment, and he saw an absolutely spectacular Christmas tree. I mean, it was adorned, it was nice and big, and he couldn't believe what he saw. And then the couple that he sold the two raggedy trees to were in that apartment. And so he had to stop, knock on the door, and ask them some questions. He said, weren't you the two that bought those two raggedy trees? But yet I see from the outside, you have this marvelous tree. And then they started laughing. And they told him, you're actually looking at the two trees that we bought. You see, what we did was we figured out how to put the two trees together, fit the branches to one another, and get the branches to overlap. And instead of having two raggedy trees, we made one powerful looking tree. What am I trying to tell you? I'm trying to tell you several things. First of all, that's what God does with us. When you find yourself in relationship with another person, oftentimes what you don't have, the other person has. What your weakness is, the other person's strength. And if you allow God to mold you and fix you, he'll put you together in such a way where it works. And it'll be one formidable tree. And then in terms of you as an individual, there's a lot you don't have that God has. And God knows how to fit broken pieces together and make them work. But what is the common denominator in everything I'm telling you? Love. And so today, let love start with you. Let love permeate you. Show the love that God has for you to somebody else. And don't let that somebody else be, for example, somebody you know, somebody you like, somebody that lives around you, but let that love be shown to somebody that's not like you, somebody that needs it, somebody that's hurting. And then you'll be the epitome of what Jesus said. What is the greatest commandment? Love the Lord your God with your heart, your soul, your mind. And then love your neighbor as yourself. I hope this word has blessed you. If you want to correspond with me, that's my email address. You can, of course, also DM me. And if you want to know about this God that loves you so much, in spite of what you've done, in spite of where you are, feel free to contact me. You see also the contact information of the church. Post Office Box 91. You see it on the screen. Contact me there. And if you feel led, and I want to thank some of you who've already done this before. If you feel led to support this ministry, you see the information on your screen. It's not required, but it will help us to continue to do ministry. You can give through Giveify. You see it on the screen, and you see the instructions, or if you're old school, send it to our P.O. Box. But whatever you do, we are grateful, and we're glad that you could be with us in this way. I hope this word has blessed you, and I pray God's best for you. I pray God's peace for you. I pray God's strength for you. And so, until we meet again, may God keep you, and may God bless you.